I had never been a morning person. For most of my adult life, alarms were battles I fought and lost. The snooze button, my closest companion. But that morning was different. Long before my phone buzzed, I was already awake, staring at the pale strips of Chicago sunlight cutting through the blinds. My heart was racing in a way that had nothing to do with caffeine or deadlines. It was the thrill of knowing that in just a few hours, I'd be stepping onto a plane bound for the Mediterranean, leaving behind my office, my routines, and, if only for 2 weeks, the gnawing guilt I carried with me every day. 2 weeks of freedom. 2 weeks with him. The suitcase had been packed the night before. Dresses folded neatly, sandals tucked to the side. A passport slipped between the pages of a novel I'd probably never finish. I sat up in bed, running my fingers through my hair, and caught my reflection in the mirror across the room. My brown eyes looked brighter than they had in months, maybe years. The faint glow of a tanning booth still lingered on my skin, a prelude to the sun I was so desperate to feel on my face. For the first time in a long time, I looked like someone in love. Evan Cross. The name alone made my chest tighten. He wasn't just the man who had stolen my heart. He was also the husband of my boss, Miranda Cross, the iron-willed CEO of Cross and Company, Global Holdings, a woman who built empires out of balance sheets, who could silence a room with a single look. She terrified most people in the company. She terrified me too. And yet, despite everything, I had fallen for the one man I should have stayed away from. It had started 6 months earlier at a company holiday party. I remembered the snowflakes catching in my hair as I stepped into the ballroom, the way the chandeliers painted everything gold. Miranda had been away at a conference, and Evan had arrived alone. He was magnetic in a way that surprised me, not just handsome, though he certainly was, but open, vulnerable. After a few glasses of champagne, we talked the way two people talk when they're starving to be understood. He told me his marriage had been cold for years, that Miranda was consumed by her career and left no room for him. "I feel invisible," he had said, his voice low, his eyes searching mine. I should have walked away. Every fiber of my professional self knew better, but the loneliness in his eyes mirrored my own. I had spent years pouring myself into spreadsheets and financial models, going home to an empty apartment that echoed with silence. That night, I saw someone who seemed to need me as much as I wanted to be needed. What followed were months of secrecy. Coffee dates disguised as client meetings, hurried text messages erased as soon as they were read, whispered phone calls made from the office landline so nothing would appear on our bills. We lived in fragments of time, stolen and fragile, but for me it was enough. Each moment with Evan made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. I knew it was wrong, knew I was risking everything. But love doesn't always wait for permission. And now, finally, we were going to be together without hiding. 2 whole weeks on the coast of the Mediterranean, where no one knew us, where Miranda's shadow couldn't reach. The thought of walking beside him on the beach, of waking up to his voice without fear, filled me with a dangerous kind of hope. I zipped my suitcase shut, grabbed my phone, and smiled at the message glowing on the screen. "Good morning, my love. I'll meet you at the airport check-in at 10:30. Can't wait to finally be alone with you." My pulse quickened as I whispered to my reflection, "You've earned this, Jessica. You deserve a little happiness." I believed it then. I believed that this was the start of something beautiful. What I didn't know was that it was also the beginning of the end. The drive to O'Hare took nearly an hour, but I barely noticed the morning traffic. My taxi crawled through the congested streets of Chicago, horns blaring, the skyline shrinking behind me. I was too wrapped up in the thought of Evan, in the image of him waiting at the check-in desk with that boyish smile he reserved only for me. By the time I rolled my suitcase across the terminal floor, the noise of the crowd felt like background music to a private dream. Families clustered around luggage carts. Businessmen hurried past with phones pressed to their ears. But I moved as if floating, convinced nothing could break my joy. It was 10:20, 10 more minutes until I saw him. My phone buzzed, and I expected another sweet message. Instead, the caller ID froze me. Cross and Company. Reception. My throat tightened as I pressed accept. Jessica Bennett, a woman's voice asked. Yes, I said carefully. This is Marissa from Mrs. Cross's office. She asked me to inform you that errors were found in the annual report. She needs you to come back immediately and review all the numbers before you leave. My grip tightened on the phone. That's impossible. My flight leaves in 3 hours. I'm already at the airport. I understand, but Mrs. Cross was very clear. She's expecting you. The line clicked dead before I could argue. For a moment, I just stood there, surrounded by the chatter of strangers, but the air felt heavy, suffocating. Miranda. Of course, she would find a way to remind me who was in control. But this time, I told myself she couldn't ruin everything. I had already checked my bag. I was leaving. Nothing would stop me. The phone buzzed again. Evan. Relief surged as I answered. Jess, we have a problem. His voice was tight, urgent. My chest went cold. What do you mean? Miranda canceled her trip to Singapore. She's in the office right now, asking questions about my plans. I think she suspects something. The ground seemed to shift beneath me. So, you're not coming? There was silence on the line, then his broken sigh. I can't, not now. If she finds out, a divorce would destroy me. Everything I own is tied to her. The words stabbed deeper than I expected. I wanted to scream, to beg him to choose me anyway. Instead, I whispered, but I'm here, at the airport, waiting for you. I know. I'm sorry. Just stay put. I'll try to come in an hour, maybe a little more. We'll figure it out. When the call ended, I was left staring at my reflection in the dark screen, a woman with painted lips and empty eyes. Around me, announcements echoed, flights boarding, people embracing, lives moving forward. And I sat alone, holding onto a dream already slipping through my fingers. That was when I felt a touch on my arm. I turned, startled, to find a young woman standing beside me. Her dark curls were tied in a high knot, her skirt bright with patterns that clashed against the sterile airport walls. Gold chains glimmered at her throat, and her eyes were sharp, too knowing. Beautiful woman, sitting alone, she said softly, her accent lilting. But I see trouble in your eyes. I stiffened. I'm waiting for someone. She smiled faintly. A lover. My breath caught. Excuse me. You carry a secret, she continued, settling onto the seat beside me as if she belonged there. You think this journey will bring you happiness, but I see danger ahead. Go back. Return to your office. There, you will find the answers you need. Her fingers brushed mine, warm, dry, unsettling. Before I could respond, she rose and vanished into the crowd, swallowed by the moving tide of travelers. I sat frozen, pulse hammering. Logic told me to dismiss her, to laugh it off as some fortune-teller's scam. But a voice deep inside whispered that she was right, that I had wandered into something much darker than a forbidden love affair. And for the first time, the idea of returning to the office didn't feel like surrender. It felt like survival. I told myself it was madness, turning back toward the city when I should have been boarding a plane. But the woman's words lingered, like smoke I couldn't breathe past. By the time my taxi pulled up to the glass tower of Cross and Company, I had convinced myself of a simple excuse. I'd left an important folder in my office, one Miranda might notice missing. That story would buy me a reason to be there, if anyone asked. The lobby was half empty, quiet in that eerie way large buildings feel when most people are traveling or working from home. I swiped my badge, the scanner beeping green, and rode the elevator up 26 floors. My reflection in the steel doors looked pale, restless. When the elevator dinged open, I stepped into the hushed corridor and walked toward my office, heels clicking like guilty confessions. Inside, the air felt wrong. Too still, too sharp. My desk was exactly as I'd left it the day before, but something tugged at the corner of my vision. I leaned closer to the bookshelf, and that's when I saw it, a tiny black lens tucked between volumes of financial law. My chest constricted. I tore my gaze across the room, and there it was again, another dot glimmering above the molding near the ceiling. My stomach dropped. Cameras. My hands shook as I pulled open the bottom drawer of my desk. Beneath a stack of files, wires snaked into a device no bigger than my palm. A recorder. Someone had been listening. For how long? Weeks? Months? I spun toward my computer, desperate for some kind of reassurance, but when I tapped the keys, the screen flashed a password prompt. Not the one I had set. I typed my usual code 3 times. Rejected. Locked out. The panic clawed at my throat. Whoever had planted those devices hadn't just watched me. They had shut me out, taken control. Looking for something, Jessica? Her voice sliced through the silence like a knife. I turned slowly. Miranda Cross stood in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the city skyline behind her. Perfectly pressed suit, hair pulled into a severe knot, eyes as cold and sharp as the steel tower she commanded. I came back for a folder. I stammered, the lie thin, pathetic. Miranda's lips curved, not into a smile, but something more dangerous. A folder. Of course. She stepped inside, the heels of her stilettos striking the floor with measured finality. Do you think I don't know? About the lies, the stolen moments, the little affair you've been clinging to like a child with a toy. My knees weakened. Miranda! She raised a hand, silencing me. Don't insult us both. I've known for months. Do you think my husband could so much as breathe without me noticing? No, Jessica. I let it happen. I wanted to see how far you would go, how deep you'd bury yourself. And you didn't disappoint. Her eyes glittered with cruel triumph. You handed me everything I needed. A record of your incompetence. Your signatures on reports you didn't even read carefully. Your trust in a man who belongs to me. You're not his salvation, Jessica. You're my pawn. And now, she leaned closer, her perfume sharp, suffocating. Now I'll destroy you. The words hit harder than any slap. My chest heaved as though the air itself had turned against me. I thought of the mornings spent waiting for Evan's calls, the nights stolen in shadows, the hope I had clung to like a lifeline. All of it, every kiss, every promise, twisted into the cruel reality that I had never been in control. I was nothing more than a piece on Miranda Cross's board, and she had just declared, checkmate. I don't remember leaving Miranda's office. The next thing I knew, I was in the dimly lit corridor outside, gripping the wall like a drunk just to steady myself. My ears still rang with her words. Pawn, destroy, checkmate. I had wanted to believe that what Evan and I shared was ours alone, fragile but real. Now all I could see was Miranda's smirk, the quiet certainty that she had orchestrated everything. I stumbled into my own office, closed the door, and pressed my forehead against the cool glass. My body trembled as though it no longer belonged to me. And then I heard it, footsteps, fast and uneven, echoing down the hall. The door swung open, and there he was, Evan. He looked different, less polished, more desperate. His tie hung loose, his eyes darting to every corner of the room before landing on me. Jess, he breathed, closing the door behind him. Thank God you're here. I wanted to throw myself into his arms, to let him tell me it was all a misunderstanding. Instead, I stepped back, my voice shaking. She knows. Miranda knows everything. I know, he said, running a hand through his hair. She's been watching us for months. That's not the worst part. A chill swept over me. What do you mean? He swallowed hard, pacing the small space like a caged animal. Cross and Company isn't just an investment firm. Miranda's been using it to launder money through a web of shell companies, dozens of them on paper owned by me. She made me the front. If it ever blows up, I take the fall. I shook my head, trying to process. That can't be true. I would have noticed. You didn't, Jess. Because she used you. He pulled a folder from his jacket and shoved it onto the desk. My eyes scanned the pages, financial statements, contracts, reports. My own signature scrawled across several. My stomach turned to stone. No, I didn't. These were just routine reviews. Exactly, he cut in. She made sure you signed them without looking too closely. Clean reports, she said. All you had to do was confirm. But they weren't clean. They were the cover. And now your name is on them. The room tilted around me. My chest tightened, my breath shallow. So I'm part of this. Not by choice, Evan said quickly, stepping closer. She set us both up. Me as the puppet CEO, you as the unwitting accomplice. It's her safety net. If the feds ever come knocking, she's got us to blame. I backed away, every nerve screaming. Then why me? Why target me? His face twisted with something like shame. Because she told me to. 6 months ago, she pushed me toward you. Said you were smart, meticulous, perfect for what she needed. At first, I thought it was just another one of her power games. But then, he reached for me, voice cracking. Then, I fell in love with you. That part, Jess, that part is real. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes. I wanted to believe him, but Miranda's words echoed like a curse. I let it happen. I wanted to see how far you would go. My heart split between fury and longing, humiliation and need. I had given myself to him in every way, only to learn that it had all begun as a trap. And yet, standing there, his eyes pleading, a part of me still ached for him. I pressed my fists against my temples, whispering through clenched teeth, I don't know what's real anymore. And for the first time, Evan had no answer. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him I was done, that I wanted nothing to do with his mess or Miranda's empire of lies. But the truth was already inside me like poison. I had signed those reports, my name was there. Walking away wasn't an option anymore. Evan leaned closer, his voice urgent. We can't run blind. We need proof, Jess. Real evidence that ties it all back to her. If we can get into her computer, pull the files, we'll have leverage. Otherwise, she'll bury us alive. I shook my head violently. You're asking me to break into Miranda's office, into her system? That's insanity. If she catches us, she's already caught us, he said, eyes locked on mine. Don't you see? She's setting the stage right now. The only way we walk out of this is if we fight back. The weight of his words pressed down on me. My instincts screamed to run, to disappear, but every exit was already locked. Slowly, reluctantly, I nodded. Fine. One chance. But if this goes wrong, we're already out of chances, he finished for me. The corridors of Cross and Company were nearly empty that night. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as we moved like shadows, every step amplified by my racing pulse. Evan swiped an access card he'd stolen from Miranda's assistant, and the door to her office clicked open. I had only been inside a handful of times before. The space was immaculate, minimalist, glass desk, chrome fixtures, the city stretching out beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. A place built to project absolute control. My hands trembled as I slid into her chair, the leather cold against my skin. Password. I whispered. Evan handed me a slip of paper, codes he'd pieced together over weeks of watching Miranda work. I typed them in, heart hammering. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered, and her world unfolded in front of me. Folders upon folders. Accounts. Contracts. Offshore ledgers. I clicked, dragging files onto a flash drive. Numbers scrolled past, dizzying in their scale. Billions moved through shell companies I had never heard of, each one a ghost with Evan's name on the masthead. Then I saw it. Project Phoenix. I opened the file, bell rising in my throat. The plan was spelled out in precise detail. Miranda intended to drain every account, collapse the company in a planned bankruptcy, and leave the wreckage behind. And when the investigators came, every trail would lead back to Evan Cross and Jessica Bennett. My hand flew to my mouth. She's going to destroy us completely. Evan's face hardened. Not if we get this out first. But before I could copy the final folder, the office lights blazed on. Going somewhere? Miranda's voice cut through the silence, cold and sharp. She stood at the door, flanked by two men in dark suits, her private security. Their eyes locked on us, hands hovering near their jackets. "Run," Evan hissed. He yanked me up, grabbing the flash drive from the port. The next seconds blurred into chaos, shouts, footsteps, the crash of glass as Evan shoved over a lamp to block their path. We bolted into the hall, sprinting past cubicles, alarms already wailing. The stairwell echoed with our frantic descent. My heels slipped on the concrete, breath tearing from my lungs. The guards were close, their footsteps pounding just above. We burst through a door into the sub-basement, weaving between shadowy corridors lined with pipes. The air was thick, metallic, suffocating. Up. Evan pointed to a service stairwell that climbed toward the rooftop. We climbed 2 flights, 3, until the door exploded open into the night. Chicago stretched out below, a glittering map of lights. Ahead of us, a narrow steel bridge connected our tower to the parking structure across the street. Wind howled, rattling the beams. My legs froze. The drop was endless black. "I can't," I gasped. "You can," Evan urged, gripping my hand. "It's this or die here." Behind us, the door slammed open, Miranda's men pouring onto the roof. Bullets cracked the night air. Adrenaline surged. I forced my feet forward, step by trembling step across the swaying bridge. The wind roared in my ears, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. Then, somehow I was across. Evan followed, pulling me into the shadows of the garage as shouts echoed behind us. For the first time in hours I could breathe, but the flash drive in Evan's hand felt heavier than lead. We had escaped for now, and I knew Miranda Cross would never stop hunting us. We didn't stop running until the city swallowed us whole. Evan's friend owned a loft near the river, a place he swore was off the grid, and that was where we collapsed just before dawn. The space was cluttered, blinds drawn tight, the faint smell of paint and dust clinging to the walls. It wasn't home, but it was safe, at least for the moment. I dropped onto the worn leather couch, lungs burning, every muscle trembling from the night's chase. Evan double-locked the door, pulled the blinds tighter, then sank into the chair opposite me. In his hand, the flash drive gleamed like a cursed object, the tiny thing that now held both our damnation and our only hope. "We can't sit on this," he said, voice hoarse. "Miranda will move fast. We need someone who can blow it open before she frames us." "Who?" I whispered. My throat felt raw. "The police? She owns half the city. The SEC? By the time they act, she'll have buried us." Evan leaned forward, eyes burning. "There's a journalist, Victor Hale, investigative. He's been chasing Cross and company for years, but he's never had hard evidence. If we give him this, he'll run it. He'll protect us." The name meant nothing to me, but the desperation in Evan's voice was unmistakable. "And if he doesn't?" I asked. "If he sells us out, or worse, if Miranda already has him in her pocket?" He didn't answer. The silence between us said everything. I stared at the floor, the weight of reality pressing down like a vice. In less than 24 hours, my entire life had unraveled. My career was gone. The moment Miranda leaked those reports, my reputation would be ash. My dignity was gone too, stripped away by the knowledge that I had been a pawn in their war from the very beginning. Even my dream of love felt fragile now, cracked under the weight of lies. And yet here I was, still breathing, still sitting across from the man who had both betrayed and saved me. I pressed my palms together, fighting the tremor in my hands. "So what you're saying is we put our lives in the hands of a stranger." "It's either that," Evan said quietly, "or wait for Miranda to finish what she started." The words echoed in my chest. Finish what she started. I thought of the cameras in my office, of Miranda's smile when she told me I was nothing but a pawn. She had already written my ending, and it ended with ruin. I lifted my gaze to Evan, and for the first time I felt something harder than fear flicker in me. Defiance. "All right," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "Call him. Set it up. If Miranda wants to play this game, then we'll give her more than she can handle." Evan exhaled, relief flooding his features. He picked up his phone, hesitated for a second as though dialing might seal our fate, then tapped the number. I leaned back into the couch, closing my eyes, the sound of his low voice drifting across the room. My pulse thudded in my ears, not just from fear, but from the certainty that the choice had been made. There was no going back. We would fight, or we would be destroyed. Victor Hale didn't look like the kind of man who could bring down an empire. He was older than I expected, with streaks of gray at his temples and eyes that carried the exhaustion of too many late nights chasing stories no one wanted told. But when Evan slid the flash drive across the diner table, Victor's hands trembled with the kind of reverence usually reserved for relics. "This," he murmured, tucking it quickly into his jacket, "is what I've been waiting for." Miranda's built a fortress around herself, but even fortresses have cracks. Give me a few days. I'll run this through sources, cross-check everything. When it's ready, it'll go public everywhere at once. Days? I asked, my voice tight. We don't have days. He met my eyes steadily. If I rush it, it won't stick. She'll call it fake, bury you both before the ink dries. If I do it right, there's no way out for her. Something in his calm steadiness made me believe him, even as my stomach twisted with impatience. When we finally left the diner, Victor drove us out of the city, farther than I'd been in years. The skyline disappeared, replaced by long stretches of trees and the glimmer of lakes. Hours later, we reached a cabin tucked deep in the woods, weathered but sturdy. "No phones, no internet," he said firmly, handing Evan a prepaid flip phone with one number saved in it. "You stay here until I come back. Don't contact anyone. Don't leave. If she's as dangerous as I think, she'll already be looking for you." And just like that, we were exiled. The cabin smelled of cedar and dust, its silence heavy enough to choke. The first night, I lay awake listening to every creak of the wooden beams, every rustle of branches outside, convinced that Miranda's men would burst through the door. Evan tried to reassure me, but his voice no longer carried the certainty it once had. He was just as scared as I was. Days blurred together. We cooked canned soup on a rusty stove, huddled under blankets as the nights grew colder. Without internet, without news, we were trapped in our own thoughts. I stared at the peeling wallpaper, replaying my life like a film on loop. For years, I had been the other woman, a secret shame that lived in the shadows. I thought I understood what that meant: guilt, longing, stolen happiness. But now, that label felt almost irrelevant. I wasn't just a mistress anymore. I was a liability, a scapegoat a woman Miranda Cross had chosen to crush for sport. The realization burned. For so long, I had carried guilt for what Evan and I had done. But guilt was useless now. What I needed was resolve. By the third day, something inside me began to shift. I wasn't thinking only about survival anymore. I thought about exposing her, about standing in the light instead of cowering in shadows. For the first time, I wanted to fight not just for Evan, not even for myself, but for the truth. At night, when the fire dwindled to embers, I found my thoughts returning to the woman at the airport. Her dark eyes, the weight of her words, "Go back. Return to your office. There, you will find the answers you need." Who was she really? Just a stranger looking to scare me, or someone who knew the danger I was stepping into? The memory haunted me, too sharp to dismiss as coincidence. Someone had wanted me to uncover the truth, even if I didn't yet know why. I sat on the porch of the cabin one evening, watching the sun bleed orange into the horizon, and whispered to myself, "Whoever you were right." We had lost track of time in that cabin. The days blended into one another. marked only by the sound of wind through the trees and the faint creak of wood as the structure settled around us. By the 5th day, I had stopped asking Evan what time it was. The minutes crawled too slowly, and yet each night I lay awake, my mind racing with the fear that Miranda was already tightening her net. When the knock came, I nearly jumped out of my skin. 3 quick raps against the door. Evan gripped my wrist, and for a moment neither of us moved. Then he opened the door, and Victor staggered inside. He looked as though he'd been running for days, dark circles under his eyes, his coat rumpled, the smell of coffee and sweat clinging to him. But in his expression, beneath the exhaustion, was a spark of triumph. "It's done," he said simply, lowering himself into the nearest chair. "The story goes live tomorrow morning." My knees nearly gave out. "Tomorrow?" He nodded. "I've cross-checked every file. Offshore accounts, dummy corporations, shell transfers, it's airtight. Miranda's entire laundering operation is documented. And Project Phoenix, her plan to strip the company and dump the blame on you too, it's all there. Every outlet I trust has the files. Once it's out, she can't bury it." Evan exhaled a long breath, rubbing his face with both hands. For the first time since the night of the chase, I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. "God, Victor, you might have saved us." Victor's tired smile didn't reach his eyes. "Don't thank me yet. She still has power, money, and influence. A woman like Miranda doesn't go down quietly. She'll fight. She'll try to drag you both with her." His words lodged in me like a splinter. I wanted to believe that tomorrow meant freedom, but nothing about this ordeal had been simple. Miranda had known every move we'd made before. Why would this time be different? That night, Evan tried to reassure me. He sat beside me on the sagging couch, his hand covering mine, his voice low and steady. "We made it, Jess. We're almost through. Once this is out, she can't touch us." I looked at him, searching his face, the lines of worry, the stubble on his jaw, the same man who had whispered love to me in stolen moments. And yet something in me hesitated, because beneath the comfort of his hand, I remembered the confession. "She told me to get close to you." I had wanted to forget, to bury it beneath the chaos, but here in the silence it echoed louder. What if every moment of tenderness had been part of the script? What if the love I thought had saved me was just another weapon Miranda had wielded? The doubt twisted inside me, sharper than fear. I turned away, staring into the fire. Even if she falls, we'll never get back what we lost. Evan's hand tightened on mine. "I don't care about the company. I don't care about her. I care about you." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to drown in those words and let them wash away the betrayal. But part of me knew better. Love built on lies, no matter how deep, might never be real. Still, truth was truth, and tomorrow the world would see it. That, at least, Miranda couldn't take from me. The morning came quietly, almost deceptively so. The woods around the cabin were still, the air damp with the scent of pine and soil. But inside, the air vibrated with tension. Victor had left us an old radio, the kind that crackled with static, and Evan fiddled with the dial until a news station came into focus. The announcer's voice was calm, professional, but the words cut through me like thunder. "Breaking news this morning. A major exposé published simultaneously by several outlets has revealed allegations of large-scale financial fraud and money laundering at Cross & Company. Global Holdings, one of Chicago's most influential investment firms. The report details a scheme known as Project Phoenix, involving offshore accounts and shell corporations tied directly to CEO Miranda Cross. Sources suggest federal investigations are already underway." My hands shook as I pressed them to my mouth. It was real. Our nightmare was no longer just ours. It belonged to the world now. Reporters filled the airwaves with details. Miranda's hidden accounts, the billions funneled offshore, the plan to bankrupt the company and pin it all on her husband and a junior analyst. My name was spoken aloud, my signature on the fraudulent reports displayed on television screens across the city. Evan's name, too, his face shown as the so-called figurehead CEO of shell corporations. The weight of it crushed me and freed me at once. I wasn't anonymous anymore. My sins, my shame, my mistakes, they were public now. No hiding, no pretending. I felt naked, exposed, but for the first time, I also felt unburdened. Evan lowered the radio slowly, his face pale, but his eyes alive with a fragile kind of relief. She can't stop it now. It's out. Everyone knows. But I didn't share his smile, because even as Miranda's empire shook, I knew the cost. Cross and company was finished. Hundreds of employees would lose their jobs. My own career, 10 years of work, late nights, clawing my way up from nothing, was gone in a headline. To the world, I was complicit, a foolish analyst who either turned a blind eye or fell into bed with her boss's husband while signing off on dirty money. And then there was Evan. I looked at him, really looked, and realized how little certainty remained between us. Maybe he had loved me. Maybe he still did. But our love had been born of lies, grown in shadows, and watered with Miranda's manipulations. Even if every word he whispered now was true, it could never undo the beginning. My heart ached, but not with longing anymore. With clarity. By afternoon, the cabin felt too small, the silence too loud. I stepped outside onto the porch, the sky washed with the pale light of a new day. For the first time in weeks, I breathed deeply without fear of who might be watching. I thought of the woman at the airport, the gypsy, the warning. Maybe she had been nothing more than a stranger, or maybe she was part of something larger I still didn't understand. But her words had proven true. The answers had been waiting for me, hidden behind Miranda's perfect mask. I had lost almost everything. My career, my reputation, the fragile dream of love I had clung to. But I had gained something else, something Miranda never intended me to have. Resolve. The truth was out. Miranda Cross would face the scrutiny she had always believed she was untouchable against. And me? I didn't know yet. I didn't know if I would find another job, or if I'd forever carry the stain of this scandal. I didn't know if Evan and I had a future, or if we were already broken beyond repair. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was no longer a pawn. I closed my eyes, letting the wind brush across my face, and whispered into the quiet morning, I am not anyone's pawn anymore. The words didn't heal everything. They didn't erase the scars, but they were mine. And for the first time, that was enough.